Good day, my friends. Today we are going to talk about the importance of having a very strong first chapter. When a new reader is ready to find their next book, and if they're somebody that goes in person to a bookstore to browse the shelves, the first thing you're going to do is look for a cover that stands out. Now, once they've found this cover that they think is really interesting, unique, beautiful, they flip over that cover and read the back blurb. Now, if that piques their interest, sometimes they will even go as far as opening up the first chapter and read a few sentences, maybe a couple paragraphs to help them make their decision if they are going to buy that book. Now, online, there are options for people to take a first look inside the first few pages of the book. So they can technically do the same thing in various platforms online. So to start, I have a few examples, 3 books that I have read by different authors, to give you kind of an overview on how strong their first chapters really were. The first one we're going to look at is Sanctuary of the Shadow by Aurora Asher. Now, when I first saw this book on the shelf, I thought this cover was absolutely beautiful. The side of the book is yellow with some black designs, and I thought, well, this must be a really great book. Now, I can't even remember if I spent any time reading the back blurb, but I do remember very clearly how I felt when I started reading the first chapter. The first thing that really stuck out to me was there was a lot of unnecessary glue words. Second, I found a lot of telling instead of showing. It was almost a little bit of minor info dumpy. There was also a lot of repetitive words in short sections, which made things very awkward to read. It also felt like it was intended for a younger audience, which was weird because there was a lot of steamy scenes, and it is a steamy romantasy. Now, the chapter 1 did also provide information about the world, but it may have been too much at once. When I got to the beginning of chapter 2, it felt stronger than the first one in terms of creating interest and making me want to keep reading. But after reading those first couple chapters, I honestly was not sure if I was going to keep reading the book. So I decided to go and check out Goodreads, and I'm not entirely sure that was the best decision to make, but I found it to be at about a 2.9 star rating, which told me that there was some negative reviews. And what did I do? I went on ahead and read some of the negative reviews, and I thought, this is pretty harsh. Some of the comments were very harsh, but I looked at the book and I thought, you know what, I'm going to give this author more of a chance than just, reading 2 chapters and giving up on it. I did, of course, find that the world was very unique, and I did like a couple of the characters thus far, so I thought, why not give them another chance? By the end of the story, I decided that I really did enjoy the storyline itself, the plot line. A couple of the characters were really well done, but there was just so much room for improvement on the writing skill and the use of language for the older audience. The steamy scenes were also decently written and not awkward at all. All right, now we're going to move on to The Book of Doors by Gareth Brown. Right at the beginning of chapter 1, it starts with an intensely emotional scene, which I really connected with. Right away, I was drawn into the main character, and I really liked her. Throughout the book, the extreme contrast between light and dark were very much exaggerated, which made it an almost shocking read during the most intense scenes. I did find some of the scenes were so light and fluffy and airy and so easygoing with nothing bad going on that I questioned whether or not I could make it through the entire book. But by the next chapter, I'd get to another intense, dark scene, and I thought, okay, I need to keep reading this. By the end of the book, there were things that I'd really hoped would happen and almost expected to happen, but they did not. So I ended the book feeling slightly disappointed, but I was thoroughly entertained overall. The third book we are going to talk about is The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. I almost dropped it. Out of the 3 books, I enjoyed this one the most. Chapter 1 began with a very interesting scene that had a stranger arriving on a distant shore, and he was someone who should not have been there in the first place and had to be smuggled away. But I'm not going to give you any more spoilers beyond that. It did very little to set up the world, but in this case, it was okay. They provided just enough information to make the reader curious, longing to read more. This is something that I would expect from a high fantasy novel. Overall, the novel was great, and I loved it, and I'm looking forward to reading book 2, which is currently sitting upstairs in my TBR pile. So overall, there are some things that we need to make sure we include in our first chapters for positive reader engagement. So that includes creating strong connections between our main characters and the reader by making our characters relatable and interesting with a very clear and distinctive personality, display their wants and their needs, their interests. Their dialogue needs to be unique to their individual person. We need to use strong and descriptive words using language that is appropriate to the age of the intended audience. Provide information about the world that your story is in to create interest, but without going overboard. There has to be something left unanswered to keep the readers engaged and curious about what is going to happen next. Also needs to have some aspect of action so that the plot is moving forward right from the start. Basically, if your chapter is heavy on description, heavy on glue words, not much happening, giving too much information about the world, readers are highly likely to just put that book back on the shelf. Having a very strong opening first chapter is going to go a long way for finding readers that want to stick with you. Well, that's all I've got for today. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon, evening, night, or whatever, and keep on writing.